everyone, it's Simi Shah, and welcome to Trailblazers. On this podcast, I dive deep into the journeys of trailblazing South Asians, sharing the stories of the leaders and dreamers lighting the way across the South Asian diaspora. Welcome back, Trailblazers. Before I get to today's episode, here's a quick message from our partner this season, McKinsey & Company.
Find out about the biggest ideas in business on McKinsey's Insights app, where you can listen to podcasts like our flagship show, The McKinsey Podcast.
We're so not tuned in to the dynamic going on for the current employees, what matters to them most.
Or watch our Author Talk series featuring law professor Dorothy A. Brown.
60% of Black college students don't graduate. And when I came across that statistic, I got so depressed.
And read lots of articles within our many newsletters like Mind the Gap, which offers insight about Gen Z. To hear, see, and read more, download McKinsey's Insights app now.
Hello, Trailblazers. Joining me today is Anita Chatterjee, founder and CEO of A-Game Public Relations. A-Game Public Relations is a bi-coastal firm known for their representation of celebrities, venture capitalists, venture firms, tech startups, and consumer packaging goods companies. Anita has built the profiles of several high-profile individuals, including Rohan Oza, guest shark on the ABC show Shark Tank, and the Grammy Award-winning artist Nee Yo. A-Game has also worked with venture firms such as Cavu Venture Partners, brands like Bai, which sold to Dr. Pepper for $1.7 billion, Gobble, the original of the 15-minute gourmet dinner kit, and our former guest, ClassPass founder, Bail Kadakia. Before Anita founded A-Game Public Relations, she orchestrated PR campaigns for several celebrities, including Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, and Rihanna. And this is all while she was an executive at the multimedia company Desi Hits, a startup founded by famed investor and manager Anjula Acharia. Anita holds an undergraduate degree in communications from DePaul University and a graduate degree in PR from Georgetown. And as I've delved into the South Asian community, I've seen Anita around every corner, elevating so many of the very trailblazers we've had on this podcast. And so I decided I needed to talk to the woman behind the curtain. Anita, so thrilled to have you here today. Thank you for joining me on Trailblazers.
Thank you for having me on. I love this podcast. And yes, you've interviewed some amazing people. So I'm just honored to be a part of that list of your inspiring guests.
Well, we're excited to have you. And I actually want to start way back at the beginning. And I would love to hear your origin story. Take me back to the early innings of your career. I mean, I know you studied communications in undergrad, but did you always know you wanted to pursue PR?
I didn't. It's funny because in retrospect, when I look back, I realized I always had a passion for PR, but I didn't really recognize what it was. Growing up with two South Asian parents, like a lot of South Asian Americans, my parents always encouraged me to pursue a field in medicine or law. And so that's the tunnel vision that I was being brought up with. But organically, I always enjoyed championing other people and organizations. I would always hold public relation officer roles in organizations I was in. And of course, later president, because I love leading groups. But PR was always something that I naturally loved. And I knew that I was strong in communication. That's why I majored in it undergrad. But like most people in my field, it was a long journey. It wasn't something that happened overnight. I started off with an internship at WGN Television, and that was a PR internship. So I knew that I liked PR. I wasn't 100% sure if it was my thing. I like championing people and writing and communicating and being creative. So that's what got me interested in it. But while I was at WGN, I would often walk past the newsroom, and that always intrigued me. It seemed a lot more glamorous than it really was. But obviously, journalists work so hard. But Their careers are so interesting. And I would always be intrigued by just how hard they were working to make deadlines and put stories together and the intriguing guests that would come into studio. So then I decided to maybe try out television for a while. And I got an internship at a local TV station in Chicago on the production side. And then I worked in production for a few years until I eventually came back to PR. And that happened actually when I was working at Desi Hits. Throughout my career, even when I was working in TV, I always understood the value of surrounding yourself with other ambitious people who knew what they're doing in the industry. A lot of my clients talk about that, including Payal Kadakia, who's the founder of ClassPass, who you know as well. She always talks about how it's important who you surround yourself with. And I believe the same thing. And I always had a strong network of ambitious people in media. And one of my friends in media, he used to work at Bad Boy Entertainment, which I don't know if you remember, but it was run by P. Diddy. But he left to join a company called Desi Hits. And I was surprised. I'm like, so you left Diddy to work for a South Asian company? And I met him for lunch, and the company just sounded amazing. Like, they were the bridge between Hollywood and Bollywood, and they had major people and organizations backing them. Jimmy Iovine, who's an iconic music mogul, was investing in Desi Hits because he believed in this vision. And the company did a lot of great things, and I really believe it was the start of Priyanka Chopra's career in Hollywood. Anjula Acharia, who's one of my best friends now and mentors, was the founder of that company, and she really makes magic happen. She started working with Priyanka then, and she always saw something in me, which I think is what led to me being an entrepreneur. But at Desi Hits, I handled their editorial, and I also worked on PR campaigns, like you mentioned, with Lady Gaga and Rihanna for different markets. And I think that's when I realized, I think PR is really my thing. I want to stick with it. So once Desi Hits, like a lot of startups, unfortunately, didn't make it. I just think it was too ahead of its time. I think if we did the same thing now, it would have been like the perfect time for it. I just think the concept was even unbelievable for Indian Americans, that we were really doing something that we raised the money for and had so much backing and things like that. I think it just wasn't the right time. But regardless, I think we all came out with like a great experience and great relationships. And after I left, I wanted to continue pursuing PR. So while I was at an agency, actually, Anjula, my friend, basically said, listen, I remember the magic you used to create with all the celebrities you worked at while we were at Desi Hits for campaigns. And now I'm investing in women, and I need someone to create that magic. Like, you need to do this for me. And she really encouraged me to start my own business and introduced me to Rohan Oza, who was my very first client at A Game. And it rose from there. And now I have a team of about 10 people. And we have an agency that's really repping some dynamic organizations and game-changing people.
Wow. What an incredible story. I want to back up a bit because there's just so many incredible points and moments that you've had throughout your career thus far. But I'm curious, at Desi Hits, you're orchestrating these PR campaigns for major celebrities, which I'm sure was like this big moment in your career. And you said it helped you determine that PR is where you wanted to carve out your niche. What were some of the specific projects and initiatives that you worked on that helped you realize that this is the space you wanted to be in?
So for Lady Gaga, Desi Hits is actually the platform that introduced her to India. And you wouldn't believe this, but before we did this campaign, the market just wasn't familiar with it. So I was pitching hard to the press, being like, this is when she already had her hit album in the US and was at like the peak of her career here. So I was pushing hard to like get her into the Hindustan Times and just really all the media outlets that we worked with out there. But it was a success. That campaign happened back in 2010, I believe. So it's been a few years. But if anyone remembers it, they just remembered how we literally got the whole country excited about having her visit and really sharing her story as a mother monster is what the media started referring to her as. Just like this really creative and cool artist that we even got Shah Rukh Khan to have an event with her out there. So it was a good and very successful campaign for Lady Gaga and her team. And I just had so much fun championing her because the more I learned about her, the more I got to like her and what she stood for and her music. And that's when I realized this is what I really enjoy doing. I love storytelling. I love championing people and organizations that I believe in. And I realized by doing so, I was inspiring people because I was helping inspirational role models share their messages.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. And as you mentioned, in 2014, you decide to go full force. You venture out on your own. You start A Game PR, your own public relations firm. And I know you said Anjula helped push you in the direction of starting this company. But what gave you sort of the insight and wisdom to feel that there was a niche you could carve out rather than going and joining or staying at an established agency?
So I was working at another agency and they actually even wanted to partner with me because they saw that I was killing it with all of their clients. And they're like, okay, we can't lose her. And it would be kind of good to bring her on the team. But I realized I really had a certain way of doing things. And I had to do it myself to make sure that it got executed the way that I wanted to. I also spent years valuing things like building my network. Like, remember, initially I told you it's so important to surround yourself with the right people. And I built an amazing network over the years. Also working in television, I was creative and I just really wanted to kind of push that creativity in agency that I worked in. And I also just had all these ideas and visions for what I wanted to do in these campaigns that even though I could share that with an agency, I just didn't think that it would do justice because I knew that in order for me to really kind of push things through, I had to take full control. So like I said, I worked for years on putting together what I needed to eventually do my own thing. So I had the confidence to start it. And I knew I wanted to start a firm that would support high growth businesses and at the same time still support celebrities and more consumer driven companies. And I just had a method of how I wanted it done. So I decided to branch off and do it. Anjula, who I mentioned before, as we all know, when she sees potential in someone, like she has the magic of to really kind of find the potential in someone. She saw the potential in Priyanka Chopra in regards to her breaking into Hollywood. And I think with me, she always knew that there was an entrepreneur inside of me and that I had this gift in storytelling. And she's the one who offered to connect me with Rohan Oza. And having him as a first client, I knew that if I could do a great job with him, I could start something really great. So really, I was a visionary. I had a bigger vision than working for someone. And I really took years to figure out, well, how is this going to happen? It's not just an idea. I need the right network. I need the right people and resources to make this work.
Absolutely. And to that end, you prompted my next question. What did the early days of starting your own agency actually entail? You have Rohan Oza as a first client, but how do you go on to get that second, third client?
So he was my first client and that was a one-woman show. And I crack up when I think to those days because I'm like, wow, it was just me and I was doing all the work. He was my first client. I also worked with an artist named Siva Kainswaran back then. There was a band called The Wanted. I don't know if you remember them. They were a British boy band.
I was a huge fan of The Wanted, and I was like his biggest fangirl. So I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, they were such a good band. And so when they actually decided to take a break, that's when I started working with Siva. And then there was a third client, which is a beverage company called Buy. But in a nutshell, what happened was, like I said initially, I knew that if I did a good job with Rohan, people would see it and other people would want to work with me. And that's the great thing about PR. Our track record is public. I actually don't have to say anything about myself because you can see it. You can see the work I'm doing with my clients. They're in the press. They're speaking at events. I'm not just going to say me now because now I have a whole incredible team that works on this as well. But initially I knew that if I did a fantastic job with him, I would really be able to get people to notice me. And people were noticing that Rohan was in the press. And of course, then I was getting inquiries. And I think my third client was actually Buy. Buy was a beverage brand that sold to Dr. Pepper for $1.7 billion. They were one of Rohan Oza's portfolio companies, and they saw the work I was doing with him. And one day I got a call being like, hey, we see the great work we're doing with Rohan. Can you do it for our brand? So that's how I got clients through word of mouth. And as more and more clients came, I realized, hey, I need to start building a team. And that's when I started seeking help for things, and finding talent is like a whole nother struggle. And it took a lot of time finding the right team and learning how to inspire them and getting them to be creative and come up with the right game plans. But over time, that all happened. And it's a beautiful thing to watch your business grow. I mean, I still laugh about the fact how early on, I would never get any cold emails from anyone. And now it's like our business development team, they have trouble keeping track of all the emails that come in with inquiries about A Game.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. When you started this, PR, broadly speaking, is still a pretty crowded space. What did you feel you could come in and do differently? What gave you the conviction that there was an opportunity for you here?
So I really value creativity, and I wanted to do more than share the story. I wanted to help people use their stories and their skills to disrupt different industries. So, for example, I was working with a software engineering school called Holberton in San Francisco, and they were looking for more African-American applicants. So instead of just coming up with like stories that might attract that demographic or basically trying to get placements in publications like Ebony or Essence, I'm like, okay, why don't we take things a step further? I also did some work with the multi-Grammy award-winning singer Neo. And I had conversations with him about the tech industry because he was a gamer. And I'm like, you need to know about the industry behind it, because the truth is there's not a lot of people who look like you, who are the engineers behind these apps. And if you got more involved, maybe it would bring more diversity. So I introduced him to the Holberton School.
Wow.
And he ended up investing and joining the board of trustees. And what I did was I did a lot of press around that. And that worked like magic because the school had a 50% increase in African-American applicants.
Wow.
So strategies like that is what I wanted to implement. I knew that, I wasn't just going to pitch. I was really going to get creative and do everything I could to share my clients' stories. And I continue to do that. A lot of times it is reaching out to journalists and talking to them about my clients. But sometimes we also host curated dinners where our clients can really kind of talk about their stories and how they're impacting the world and continuing to just be really creative with partnerships. So I think that's what makes A Game different. We try to be extra creative and just really customize our strategies with each of our clients. I also knew that I really wanted an agency that could go as hard on business press as they could with consumer press. So I made sure to be aggressive with hiring a really diverse group of people, where I have people in my agency who know the venture capital world like the back of their hand. And then I also have people who've had that strong agency background and have worked at some iconic firms on consumer press and know that really well too. So just really hiring people who were good on both sides of news was important to me.
Very, very interesting. To that end, today you work with such a large range of clients, investment firms like Trinity Ventures. You've talked about personalities like ClassPass founder Bayo Kadakia, Neo, CPG brands like Buy. What are the nuances of working with these three different categories of clients? What PR principles stay the same? What changes?
Here's the thing. I think, like I said, you got to customize your strategy with every client because every client is different. Their objectives are different and their leaders are different. So with that being said, you need to go in to every client being like, okay, we know what's going on in the world, but what are we dealing with? What messages do they want to give? And what can we do to take it to the next level? And so there's generic PR principles. Be honest and be dedicated to your client. Of course, we're fully dedicated to all of our clients. But what I'll say is consistent with all of my clients across the board is to keep a calm energy around them. Because PR can be very stressful. It's not an easy process. It's also a very emotional process for our clients because especially a lot of the high growth companies we work with, their founders have just like spent their life building these companies and have given it their all. And so the important part is to be calm and strategic and let your clients know that you know what you're doing and that we're going to find a way to get there. And I think that's just been something that's been consistent with all my clients that I work with.
What do you think is different across the clients you work with in terms of how you operate as a PR firm?
It all depends on what their initial objectives are. Obviously, with a lot of food and beverage companies, it's not the people that we're focused on. It's more of like the organization and the products. So we'll focus more on getting them in stories and just coverage that's more so about the products themselves. And then, we would have executives from their companies speak in conferences and things, but it would be all about getting the name out for the brand. When I work with celebrities, it's a lot of personally connecting with them and getting to kind of understand their stories and their mission and how one person is going to connect with them. So with organizations, there's usually a lot of different storylines that come into play. And just a lot of different angles we could take with the press, where a lot of times when you're working with an individual, there's one storyline that they are sharing, and you're making sure to kind of make them a household name by getting that message out for them.
You alluded to this earlier, but PR is obviously known for being a tough industry. It's not just positive PR. Oftentimes it's crisis management. You can't always control what's going to go to print, what a journalist is going to say, particularly in today's environment where people's actions are scrutinized more deeply. I'm curious if you could speak to the difficulties of the field and the reality of failure that you've personally experienced, particularly to sort of inform the perspectives of young professionals who might want to pursue a career in PR.
PR is hard. I mean, at the end of the day, even if you have like the most amazing story in the world, the truth is there's so much going on in the world. The press has their options. And even if your story is intriguing, if there's a major news event happening, that's going to be in the headlines, not necessarily your story. But that doesn't mean that you have to give up hope. I think the important thing is setting client expectations and letting them know that even if we don't get there yet, like trying to come up with a strategy of how to get there. And I think that's an important learning lesson, I think, to all the younger professionals who are getting into my field, that it's important to kind of make your clients from the get-go understand this is hard. I think the biggest mistake people make with PR firms is they just hire them and expect a ton of press. They don't really view them as strategic long-term partners. And that's the thing. You got to view it as a strategy. You're not just going to land the story right away. A lot of times it takes a lot of extra effort in the background, like meeting with journalists, changing your own profile on social media, maybe doing a partnership, trying to kind of figure out the right time to go with an announcement. I think that's an important thing just for people to learn in general. But going back to your question about failures, I mean, that's a hard one. I wouldn't call it failures. I would call it maybe learning curves. And there are mistakes that I wouldn't make now because I've obviously learned from them. But I know early on, there was a few times where I was talking to press and I was under the impression that this was off the record. But of course, I did not say off the record. So unfortunately, I was then quoted in the newspaper and I was like, oh my gosh. But again, I've learned from that. And the other thing is too, now I've been in the field for many years. So I have a lot of friendlies and I'm more known. So I tend to have a better rapport with journalists. And I also say off the record a million times and I'm extra careful. But I think, yeah, early on when I was first entering the field and working at other agencies, sometimes I would get a little more trusting or put things on email. And I learned you just have to be so careful with what you put out there.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts on the quote, all PR is good PR?
I mean, I don't agree with that. I don't think all PR is good PR, but I don't think that like PR is a bad article is the end all. I think that you're in the press and if there's an image that's put out there and you don't want that image or you don't want that story or that news peg being the highlight of who you or your organization is, there's ways to pivot and change that storyline. The reason why I don't agree with all PR being good PR is it just depends on a company's objectives or what a person's goals are. And sometimes articles can really have some negative effects on a person's career. I mean, that's the honest truth. But with that being said, if there's a bad article out there, there's ways to reinvent people, reinvent organizations, and you could do that through the power of storytelling.
I love that. So today you're almost a decade into running your own PR firm. What have been the biggest learnings?
I think the biggest learning is to always remember that at the end of the day, you are the expert. For me, I'm a very nice person, and I always had the philosophy of we make magic happen for our clients. But now when I go into things, I'm very confident in, where I stand. And I'm like, if you want this to work from experience, I can tell you this is the strategy that you're going to follow. And I make sure that everybody on my team has that same level of confidence because the truth is we have a track record to prove that now. And I think it's just when you have that track record, don't let anybody else define you or tell you you can or you can't do something. I mean, over the career, so many people have told me, oh, you're great with profiles, but you can't ever do a food and beverage company. And I'm like, yes, I can. I know I can. So I'll show you. And I have. I mean, I've had Collie Power is a massive company. They're in over 25,000 major retailers. And they've been our client for many years now because they've been very happy with the work that we're doing with them. Yumi, which is another major national company, They got known for being an organic baby food delivery service, but now also as more of a family pharma company, they've also been with us for years. And there's people initially, especially when I did more profile building, where they're like, oh, profile building is her thing. But no, my thing is, if I have an amazing client, I know I could do a fantastic job. And I think that's the thing. Don't let anybody define you. If you know you can do it and show it to them. So I think confidence and belief is such an important part of leadership. Actually, Payal, who, I mentioned before, I think she once said that if someone didn't believe in me, it was their problem, not mine. And I fully agree with that. So I think having that confidence as a leader, I noticed that it's very important and it helps what keeps an organization inspired. I learned that clients, they come to do PR because they're so passionate about what they're doing. And so it's important to really care and love your clients because they've come to you with their baby. So you need to really treat it like something that's really huge. It's going to change the world. And normally it is. A lot of the companies we work with are disruptors. So that dedication is so important. I've had that from the beginning, but as years go by, you learn just how much more important it is. And as an entrepreneur, I learned that it's important to just be there for your team and make sure that you support them in your growth, because that's what will also just make sure that the company continues to produce great work for their clients.
Can I just say I love and admire the confidence. I feel like it's not something we talk about enough, especially when it comes to starting and running our own entrepreneurial endeavors. So I really appreciate you emphasizing that. I want to spend a second on the South Asian leaders and founders you've worked with, between having someone like Anjula as a mentor, working with South Asian leaders like Payal and Rohan Oza. You've done incredible work in championing a lot of people in the South Asian community. And I'm curious, has that been intentional? And I'm sure it has, but in what ways do you think your identity as a South Asian woman has augmented your ability to elevate these individuals and elevate people in our community?
It has been intentional, obviously. We run an American agency, so our key focus is South Asian American. However, we could share a story that we fully understand. And that's why we spend so much time with our clients, really hearing their stories, but also just asking them questions so they themselves realize what their journey is about. And by being South Asian, I can resonate with how a lot of the things that they've been through and their journeys of being Indian Americans and just the issues that they dealt with at home. And in having that understanding, it's made it easier for me to share their stories. When I shared the stories of Rohan, a lot of times it's not just been about his track record, but it's also just been about him and growing up in Zambia and just his parents. Even with Payal, a lot of times I can help her craft stories because I understand a lot of parts of them, like her love for dance and how important her dance teacher was when she grew up in New Jersey. And I can kind of help her think about the important parts of her story because I can resonate with it. So I think I've been able to do a good job of that because, like I said, I understand their journeys being South Asian American myself. With that being said, I think that's why I'm successful in just being a storyteller. I really kind of dive deep and try to find out more about people's journeys and just every little detail about their life. Like I tell every client, I want to know you like the back of my hand. I need to know everything about you. And with the South Asian American clients, I think you probably feel the same as me, where you still feel excited when you see more Indians on television. Or I remember Nina Duvaleri, she's a friend of mine, when she won Miss America, I'm like, this is so cool, an Indian girl has won. So I do know that I have the power of informing the press, and I knew that I could help the press see South Asian Americans doing amazing things in their field. So that was very intentional. And with that being said, I focus on showcasing diversity in a lot of different demographics. I champion women for that reason. Like I mentioned with Mio, he's an African-American male. And by working with him, I definitely brought in more awareness about African-Americans and their roles in tech as well.
I have to say, so much of what you're saying is resonating because I also consider myself as someone who has a passion for storytelling, obviously in a different format in terms of how I channel that passion. But what you're saying just resonates a ton and very deeply. And I also think speaks to the importance of having representatives across the industry like PR who understand and resonate with stories that are often not told as often in mainstream media. And you're obviously helping bring those to the forefront.
Yeah, we inform the public by our relationships in the press. So it's something that I've always been passionate about.
In almost a decade, again, of running your own PR firm, what's been a particularly memorable or impactful project you worked on?
Oh, there's been so many. We recently worked on a project with the Auschwitz-Birkenau Memorial Foundation. They came out with a book of recipes from survivors of the Holocaust. There was even a recipe in that book from Elie Wiesel. And it was just such an inspirational book. The Holocaust is such a horrific time in history, but it was just so inspiring to see how people basically found inspiration during such a dark time. And they did that through food. And I just thought it was a very nice book to have shared. And it's always fun to be a part of different communities and see what they're doing. So that's been a project that I've really enjoyed being a part of. I think working with ClassPass and Payal Kadakia has been great. I really feel like our firm was a big part of her journey in becoming a preeminent female founder and really getting the ClassPass story out there. Kavu Ventures, which is Rohan Oza's VC firm. Rohan was my first client, so of course that'll always be memorable. Just watching him grow the way he did and just seeing the articles come out and how he was tagged as a Hollywood grandfather, and then the big features we got around the venture firm and getting them on CNBC multiple times, and then watching Rohan get on Shark Tank. That was just obviously amazing to see because that was one of my first clients. But, it's hard. We've worked with so many people at this point. I really have loved so many of the projects I worked with. I mean, Collie Power, I loved that account. Another female-founded company, and they're just so innovative, and their marketing team is always a pleasure to work with because they come up with really cute creations. Like for Valentine's Day one year, they did like a chicken nugget bouquet. And as silly as that sounds, it was just, a fun announcement to share. So, one of the really cool ones that I'm actually going to do again this year is the pre-Oscar event that we call South Asian Excellence. Last year was hosted by Priyanka Chopra, and it was the first ever event that brought together South Asian Americans in Hollywood. And it was just so inspirational, and I think everybody there felt so good about it, and it was just an honor to do press on it. And this year, I'm actually joining the co-hosts for the event. So it's being hosted by Priyanka Chopra and Anjula Acharia, but they've invited me along with Malala Yousaf, Cal Penn, Mindy Kaling, and a few others to co-host it with them. So I'm a co-host, and A-Game is also handling all the press and a lot of the logistics of the event. So that's just a really inspirational event, and I'm so proud that, there's another year of celebrating South Asian excellence at the Oscars.
Absolutely, and what an all-star ensemble you guys have put together. In the same way that it seems a lot of your clients have evolved and you've seen them grow over time, I imagine your role has also shape-shifted over the years. Can you speak a little bit to what your day-to-day looks like running A-Game PR?
It's different every day, just because obviously there's always different calls and different meetings that I need to be at. But I always start off my day with checking my emails. It's funny because people normally, over the years, I've heard a lot of the founders I work with talk about how they have like a routine when they wake up or they drink coffee or there's something they do. But I work in PR. And so I'm just very much about, let's get this going. I need to know what's going on. And so the first thing I do is look through all of my emails. I think that just helps me get organized for the day. Once I look through my emails, I take a look at my schedule. And my schedule varies, but normally a lot of my days, I spend time having meetings with my team. We have internal meetings about our clients. I have a lot of phone calls with journalists, a lot of meetings with journalists. We also have a lot of weekly meetings with our clients, a lot of brainstorm sessions. Some of the days I'll be out at a shoot with my client. Me and my team, we often accompany our clients to TV segments they're on, or if they're doing a magazine shoot, we'll be on site, helping them prep for the interview or making sure that the vision that we have for the photo shoot is being implemented. It varies. And obviously, there's a lot of events in the mix. There's a lot of events that we put together or that we get invited to. And you've been to a lot of the events that I put together. It's just great to bring very cool people together.
Yeah.
And so it varies. It's exciting that way, where it's a lot of work. It's always very busy. And there's a lot of people that I talk to in one day.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, as someone who's been to many of the events you've put together, I think they're really stellar and bringing the community together and always having a purpose at the center of it. So I've appreciated what you've done there. I want to take one step back and ask you about the bird's eye perspective you have on PR as an industry. I imagine it's shape-shifted a lot over the last decade, just given trends in social media, the way news media operates. I'm curious what trends you've seen in terms of what the client wants and the shifts in how PR works.
So social media is always brought up. I mean, obviously, years ago, there wasn't social media. Now there is. And so clients now see that a lot of prominent media platforms have Instagram live series and things that they want to be involved with. And I think that's always a smart way to move forward because the power of social media is very real. And so I definitely see a lot more engagement with social media the clients want to have. I think in terms of the trends, people always want to come and get into like the top tier media outlets. That's never going to change. They'll always be a part of the traditional PR process. But yeah, I think social media is like a big part of the equation now, and it wasn't before. And now it's like they want to work with influencers and they want to get a bit more creative with partnerships, which is very cool.
Now, the last question I have for you today is, what would you say to the version of you many, many years ago who was just thinking about starting a career in PR? And I ask that from the lens of young professionals who want to break into this field today, but don't know where to start.
Oh, wow. I'll be honest. I was always very ambitious. I wanted this, but I never actually saw myself running a company that has seen so much success. I mean, this is incredible. I think I would have told my younger self, well, here's like the thing. What I do like about what I did in the younger years was I was very humble. I was very hardworking, and I kept going until I figured out what was good for me. And I do think that that's something that helped me along the way. And I hope that that, inspires other people to do the same, because it just rejection happens and you might find that what you're trying to do is not for you, but eventually you'll get on the right path. What I would tell my younger self is don't treat everything like a tragedy. You will eventually get there. Sometimes when you're not at where you want to be in your career, that doesn't mean you're not going to get there. It's just a way to help you figure out the right direction you're supposed to go in. So I would tell my younger self to chill the hell out because I was always full of anxiety, and I'd wake up and be like, is this going to happen? Am I going to make it? And am I going to have the career that I want? And I think I would tell my younger self to chill out, be calm, and just trust in myself because it's going to work out. And I think that's really what I would tell my younger self, because I think there was days I'd wake up and I'd just be like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm going to make it. This is such a competitive industry. But I think some of that really wastes a lot of time. That's negative energy. And it's just important to always look ahead and believe in yourself and know that if one thing doesn't work out, you'll figure out something else. So have more faith in yourself and chill out.
Well, Anita, thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for taking the time to share your story. It's so incredible to hear all that you've achieved, and particularly for our community and beyond. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for producing such an amazing series. You're really putting a lot of dynamic South Asians on the map, and I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode. If you want to get new episodes straight to your inbox, subscribe to our newsletter at southasiantrailblazers.com and follow us at South Asian Trailblazers on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.